Welcome back to our community. Susie Thomas visiting with Jenny Wanger. She's got a blog called A Good Man is Hard to Find. My search for Ronald B. Tamman.
Ronald H. Tamman.
Ronald H. Tamman Jr. Yeah. Okay, I knew I shouldn't
close.
ad lib.
That's close.
But basically, the search for Ron Tamman, that you have found out some things that a lot of people have not really found out yet. But before we leave the FBI, we talked about all the friends you've made during this process. FBI's wouldn't be considered among those friends, I'm guessing. They know you, don't they?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. Yes, I have sued the FBI.
Yeah, you have.
And actually, it's the Department of Justice. If you look up online, you will see Wanger versus the Department of Justice.
Well, I've got to look that up just for the fun of it. I've got to take a screenshot of that. Tell me about your FOIA. First of all, for people who've not sued the FBI, what's a FOIA?
Okay.
A FOIA request, and your experience with them.
Yeah. So a FOIA request is something that every citizen is able to do. And I would actually encourage all citizens to try it. I mean, it's your right. FOIA stands for Freedom of Information Act. And it, I'm a big believer in government openness and accountability. Mm-hmm. And so there are ways that you can make them more effective, and you can go online and see that. The more specific you are, the more you know exactly what you're looking for, the better. But sometimes you don't know what you're looking for. That's the case of Ron Tamman. I knew that there must have been something because they had his prints. And so that's, so I filed a FOIA with them early on. And the other thing with filing FOIAs is always appeal. So when they come back and say, gosh, we can't find anything, say, well, that, I would hasten to,
Remind them who they work for.
That's right. And then you get into and then after an appeal, that's when you get into the actual lawsuit.
Because his father was receiving letters from J. Edgar Hoover, yes?
Right. Yes, but they were form letters, but supposedly, but then they stop. They stop shortly after, interestingly, shortly after J. Edgar Hoover died. They no longer were receiving letters. So something happened in the 1970s that all of a sudden, it and I don't know what that is. I've tried to pin it down, but
what are some of the theories that are out there?
Well, there was that amnesia thing. Mm-hmm. There was the, mob. Let's talk about that fish, The
fish in the bed. Let's go back to that.
Right. So there's this fish in the bed. And so you've probably all seen, Godfather,
mm-hmm.
Where
the whore's head.
There's that, but also there's a time where I think it's James Caan. I'm not a big Godfather person, but there's James Caan throws a fish on somebody's lap and says it's
swimming with the fishes.
Swimming with the fishes.
Okay, so mob activity maybe.
Yeah, so there's that.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Just that he got tired and ran away. All kinds of things like that. But there was no. People wondered about, there back then, I don't know if they do it now, but in fraternities, they used to drive people out. Mom had
hazing.
It done. Right. They would drive somebody out in the middle of nowhere and then leave them and there'd be, and there was a potential sighting of somebody that night, which made people wonder, perhaps this was in 7 Mile, which was about 9 miles away.
Yeah, let's put that one to rest right now because how far away was that? You and I drove it last year. Talk about that. What that theory says that he may have done, and then you and I drove it, and it seemed to take forever.
So if he would have left at 8:30 and supposedly showed up at this woman's house at around late at night.
11-ish
at night. It's a very, very hilly, very, it would have been...
far.
And far. And if he was actually, if he had memory issues, it just didn't, it seemed pretty outlandish. Also, there's the chance that I've spoken with somebody who said, Jenny, your time frame, it's, nice blog, but your time frame's all off. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. He was in the fraternity, and he said, I was with Ron Tamman the night he disappeared. And he said we were at song practice.
So that puts it later than 8 o'clock.
Much later. So it would have been, and yeah, the people in the dorm wouldn't have known that Ron was at song practice. This guy, he was extremely credible. So it's very possible that he came back at like 10:30. Well, there's no way he's going to immediately start walking to 7 Mile.
He would have been hoofing it.
And he would have never made it in time. Plus, as you remember, we drove by how many houses to get to Mrs. Spivey's house,
Mm-hmm.
So, it just didn't seem to hold a lot of water.
No. So you've gone through really spending the last however many years dispelling a lot of these ideas and coming up with some new information that a lot of people have not come up with yet. I'm torn. Part of me wants to say, Jenny, what happened? And another part of me wants to say, go to, first of all, today we're doing a Twitter thing. How can people follow that?
So that's from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern time,
Mm-hmm.
and our hashtag is TammanChat.
TammanChat.
And if you want to go to my personal Twitter account, it's at JW Wenger. But yeah, hashtag TammanChat and ask questions, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible.
I do want to warn you, if you are new to all of this and you're thinking, I'll go read her blog real quickly before joining in the chat, that won't happen because the blog is a book. You really have written a book. Is that your plan?
It is the plan to write a book, yes. That was the ultimate goal. And then all of a sudden I started blogging for a variety of reasons, mostly to see if I could, attract an audience to convince an agent, that whole thing. Mm-hmm. So, and then the blog kind of, it's funny, you start blogging and you find a different voice than you were ever used to writing in. And that's kind of what happened.
Well, can I just say it's fun to read?
Thank you.
It's very fun to read, but they are chapters. I mean, you've got your book ready right there. Even if you leave it open-ended, you've got a really cool book because it's your search.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying it is. It's, a good man is hard to find. My search for Ronald H. Tamman Jr.
And if I could just say, and I know I don't want to get too much into it because there is a surprise. It's kind of a big one. And I just wanted to emphasize that sometimes you think it's going to be the easiest answer and it's really a little more complicated. And in this case, I think it's a lot more complicated.
Well, I'm thinking that because of the response that you've gotten from the FBI, they've still, 66 years later, redact so much information. You're thinking, what do you want to hide? What can we not see right now? What is so important to national security that you're not open with this today? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to throw this out there, Jenny. What happened?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a little bit, and that is, the other agency that I've been dealing with is the CIA. And that is one of the things that was another theory that people threw out. And again, everybody was thinking, oh, please. But what do you know? There is an indication that someone who Ron knew was CIA.
At Miami.
And that is what, if you go to my blog, I'm releasing two CIA documents that I believe ties this individual to Ron Tamman. Now, the question is also, well, how did this all happen? It's when dealing with the CIA, the FBI is a romp in the park compared to the CIA. And seriously, the FBI at least gives you things. The CIA will never, ever give you anything. I'm speaking honest
from your
here.
personal experience.
They give me nothing.
Well, and let's say you're not just somebody who got this idea. You have been a government worker for a lot of your career, but you have experience working with the government.
I do. And that, I think, helped a lot with, I used to work with, I was in communications, but the people in the FOIA office was always next door, so I knew, and I would help when they were looking for, when they would receive a Freedom of Information Act request. And if it was in our department, we could help with that. So I knew all about that. I also knew about I knew when people called our office and reporters asking for comment, things like that, we did that. And and so I just applied those tools to this and calling the FBI and saying, okay, I would like your comment on this. And they would
So what kind of a surprise was it to not receive what you were so freely giving to others?
That was a surprise. All agencies are not the same.
Mm-hmm. So you definitely have some things in your blog that we will be fascinated in reading as far as what you're thinking could have happened. We're talking about a completely different age. We're talking about a completely different time in history. And I'm wondering, too, were we talking about a time of innocence where we just believed whatever someone told us?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. And I happen to believe that I believe the university was told to call off their investigation.
Wow.
I do believe that, because what happens, as I was looking through it, the investigation pretty much ended very shortly after he disappeared. They really did not. That was another thing that I found, was that they weren't really pursuing the leads. There was a guy from the university who knew Ronald Tamman. His name was H.H. Stevenson. He was a housing official, and he's the one who gave Ron his permit to have his car on campus, which anybody that goes to Miami, I think it's still really hard to have a car.
It is.
And he knew Ron. In August of 1953, which mere months after Ron disappears, he thinks he sees Ron in Wellsville, New York. And he's on vacation, and he says, I have no idea why they didn't say anything to him while they were sitting there in this hotel restaurant. But he went back the next day. He was coming back from vacation. He went back to school and said, he reported it to Carl Knox was the official who was doing the investigation. They didn't do anything. They did not do anything. Not even calling, by that time the FBI was interested. They knew about it. All they had to do was call the FBI and get their Buffalo office to go check out the lead. They didn't do that. So how come? And there's a bunch of that stuff.
Fascinating. And we could go much deeper, but we're out of time. So you've got to go to the blog. A Good Man is Hard to Find. My search for Ronald H. Tamman Jr.
And I'll say it's HTTP ronaldtamman.com. No W's.
Okay, just go to that and you're able to find that. Blog ends today, so if you want to read it, it'll be up there for all time, right? But right. No new additions to it.
No new posts until I get absolute confirmation of my theory. That's what I'm waiting on.
Awesome. And today, Twitter happening
at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you're in Oxford or anywhere near there, why don't you stop in at Mac and Joe's? Susie Thomas will be there, as am I, and we're going to be doing our Twitter from there, but I also have some very cool keychains that I'm handing out.
Very cool. Jenny Wanger, it's fascinating. Thanks for joining us on our community.
Thank you.